Welcome everyone, Simon here from the Whales of Wall Street. Guys, Evergrande, let's discuss. So, a lot of people have seen a bit of a crash today. I don't think it's a huge one, certainly not yet anyway. But the main reason behind it is Evergrande Group. And you're probably thinking, well, why is something around the real estate aspect of property developer having such an impact on stock markets and crypto in general? Well, in the background, guys, just quickly, actually, let's just talk about Evergrande Group. So the second largest property developer in China by sales, ranked 127 on the Fortune Global 500. Now, isn't it funny, like all these dodgy companies are never in their own country doing financial stuff. They're always on these Cayman Islands and nonsense, Anyway, that aside, so yeah, very much in building infrastructures of small commercial buildings or skyscrapers kind of things, middle income dwellers, upper and middle as well. So pretty much a big mixture. I think they're actually doing a stadium quite recently, Ganzhou region, the Ganzhou Stadium. They're being made by Evergrande. It'd be interesting to see if that actually gets completed. Otherwise, people are just going to be playing football in half a stadium or something. Who knows? But of course, this isn't the first time we've seen an Evergrande crisis, or certainly news of it. So this one obviously mentions back in the September the 20th. Get that right. Where there was indeed an aspect of information around debts or payments due on the debts. Now that in itself did a bit of a market, I don't want to say collapse, but certainly a correctional period in the markets. We'll go into that in a bit more detail in a second in terms of like recommendations and stuff on this, but obviously not financial advice or anything, but it's more what I'm doing, and it's down to you guys to decide what you want to do from all this. But generally, just keep your hands strong on all your crypto assets for sure. Now, that's a bit of an overview of Evergrande, but we're just going to look quickly into these pieces of news. Now, predominantly, this is what annoys me the most, and it's kind of arguably poor responsibility aspects from media. Well, actually not poor, they probably just do it on purpose because most of them are owned by banks anyway. But here, for example, you've got Evergrande on the brink of collapse. Another really leading story, of course, gets you clicking, gets you reading in amongst this about defaulting on debts. Now, this is true. Many sources have picked this up, of course, and just generally what's been flowing around in the media and information-wise. But actually, people are taking this wrong way. Everyone jumps on Twitter and like saying, "Oh, the world's going to end, everything's going to collapse, this, that, and the other." And yeah, of course, it makes a detrimental impact in stock markets. We'll go into that in a second. Why? But there's other news articles here which are even newer than the ones that came out earlier today, saying Evergrande's set to avoid the default after paying its overdue interest. So it's obviously had a bit of a grace period, maybe this week for a few days or something. In fact, 30-day grace period. Now, those that are in business, sometimes financial difficulty occurs and you get a bit of a grace period to try and sort things out. Here, for example, is around coupon payments totaling $148.1 million. So it's kind of a mix-up here of some bonds and some notes included as well throughout the next few years. So they're racking up debt. They're obviously building and building and building without worrying or thinking about too much the detrimental effect of what's going to happen. They're planning for the future. And it's really weird, actually. There's a YouTube video, I think, around the ghost city of China. Go and check it out. So basically, I'm assuming Evergrande have obviously had some part in this, but in China, there's a couple of cities, crazy this is, there's a couple of cities that have no one in them, no one lives there, but they've built enough there to populate maybe 2 million, 5 million people. They built schools, traffic lights. The traffic lights are on, by the way. They go on and off like any other traffic lights. There's no cars. No one lives there. There's no one in the schools. There's no one in the restaurants. Nothing. They've just built or from the outside, it would look like maybe you've turned up at World War Z or something, where there's zombies everywhere and no one wants to come out, and that's why it's a ghost town. Go and check honestly, it's absolutely incredible, and it actually relates to what I know specifically. Of course, Australia and China, of course, is a big weird thing going on there at the moment anyway, but Australia is a big importer exporter of steel and everything to China, and China can actually put I think it's something silly like a 52-story building up within 2 weeks, because they're all pre-made over in Australia. And of course, you see all this narrative around the world at these days, and it kind of brings me to my point, guys. Like, before you jump to conclusions and jump into the bandwagons, try and find other bits of information as much as you can. It's not easy, because you kind of trust these mechanisms and media outlets and stuff. I don't trust media at all. And you could argue that on both of these aspects, that, well, which one's actually telling the truth? Bloomberg, I'm pretty sure, are owned by, is it the Barkey brothers? I can't really remember. They're certainly owned by banks, I think, in some capacity. Maybe that's someone else, but I'm pretty sure they are. So you kind of take each bit with a pinch of salt, but equally, on the other side, we've had this big sort of reduction in the market today. In all honesty, I don't really think it's that bad. I mean, between sort of 5 and 10%, most of them. We've had a bit of a retracement, obviously, since the news kind of originally came out a few hours ago. But generally speaking, guys, it's kind of intertwined for a couple of reasons, really. So why is Evergrande affecting, the likes of crypto and stock market? Well, there's a number of real reasons why in the background. From what I know about Evergrande, I know for a fact that they actually arguably owe money to a substantial amount of banks around the world and financial institutions. I don't know how they get away with it. I don't know can someone just comment? It's weird, because like the SEC will go after Ripple and all this all the time, but I'm not expecting the SEC to go over this, because it's a Chinese company, obviously. But surely, well, actually not surely, because I can imagine there's loads of rich people making still a load of money out of this, moving profits about like Enron did back in the early 90s or whenever it was. But it's amazing that no one stops this nonsense. It's like Woolworths, mate. Like Woolworths in the UK, I always make this point. So I used to have friends that worked at Woolworths. I loved Woolworths. I used to go and get my pick and mix and other nonsense from their games and stuff. Those who remember Woolworths, please let me know in the comments below. If I'm sure you had Woolworths in your other countries or something similar. They went absolutely mental, bankrupt. I think it was like 300 or 400 million in debt or something, if I remember correctly. And I always thought in my head, I was like, when I had bits of debt every now and then over the years and stuff, for whatever reason, I don't really do anymore, because I've managed to learn from all of that. But whenever I was like even like £10 in debt, I'd be like panicking, going, oh god, this is terrible. When you're a business and you're like talking about maybe $10,000 in debt or something, and you're like, okay, we can manage that. $100,000, yeah, we should probably ask some questions here. 100 million, 300 million. What are you all doing? What are you actually all doing? Who put these people in charge, and why haven't they fixed it? Anyway, so go back to my point about Evergrande. Like, who's letting these people or these companies run wild? It's like the Wild West. It's ridiculous. So they're owing all the money to all these banks, of which, if you're invested in the banks or you're associated with the banks or the firms, you're going to have in the know information, like the status of that. Okay, well, if they're not paying us, how are we going to pay our people? And obviously they've probably got loads of other different customers, of course, but it still makes a big difference to the profit and loss or the P&L lines at the end of financial years, right? So, creditors and everything is really important. So that's kind of like one of the kind of reasons, really, of that aspect. So that kind of tells into stock markets, then confidence gets dropped there. Crypto is, of course, kind of tied psychologically. It's not directly impacted in the sense that there's nothing really associated, other than things maybe like Bitcoin, where you're talking about liquidity and assets, and of which it was quite interesting. A few topics around that I've sort of been looking at around sort of like the USDT. Of course, there's a load of nonsense going around at the moment about that as well. Everyone's jumping on the bandwagon because of like fraudulent activity in USDT and stuff. And I'm sort of sitting there going, banks have been doing this for like 100 years. Inflation, manipulation, to gain interest rates, to gain us to spend more money and not spend money. It's like, but when it's crypto does it, it gets blown out of proportion. No one knows what they're talking about. They just talk nonsense. Like, I don't get it. But I take a step back and I'm like, sure, I don't really care about this Evergrande thing. There's a dip, brilliant. I'm going to buy more, brilliant. For those that want to shake out and run away, that's absolutely fine, and you have your right to do so. But I've learned a lot in this space. Like, of course, you need to be protective of your assets and only put in what you afford to lose, so you can never lose in that aspect anyway, if you think logically about that, what I'm just saying. So really, it is a bit of a mess. And I'm not saying that Evergrande's going to come out of this fully. Yeah, of course, they're defaulting, which is not good. You're arguably talking about a lot of jobs there as well, so I feel for the people that perhaps work for them. But, you know, that aside, as a business, it's an absolute disaster. So, you know, as this news portrays, it's similar like Bitcoin and China and the environments. And by the way, guys, right, this is interesting. Hopefully you find this interesting. So I know a lot of people in China through work and stuff. Lovely people. And basically, we get a lot of FUD over here in the media and everywhere around the world that China is environmentally unfriendly, this, that and the other. But I'll tell you now, right, this is from the horse's mouth, as it were. Apparently, there's about a 2-year wait in a lot of provinces in China to obtain a new petrol car. So you have to be on a list. So they're trying to reduce the amount of petrol cars. And also, in most provinces, they give you up to 2 years of free charging. And they also reward significantly to EV manufacturers that every 1,000 or so cars that they make. So I think that's a hell of a lot of better effort than we're doing here in the UK, because we're trying to put in heat pumps, which is an absolutely terrible idea. But hey ho, it's making loads of people money, right, in the contract business. Sounds very similar to all the PPE nonsense and other stuff that I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole. But back to this point of Evergrande, it's about the narrative, guys. That's what I'm trying to get you to think about. Is like, don't always believe what you read firsthand. Go and check out other sources, because easily here, got conflicting things. The whole thing's a disaster, according to this title. Brink of collapse. Well, that was the same in September. It was the same ages ago, and times before that. It's the same when Bitcoin gets talked about with, oh, it's going to collapse, it's rubbish, it's environmentally unfriendly, and then all of a sudden it drops. 2 days later, everyone's happy about it again. Brilliant. And then this news article is saying Evergrande's set to avoid default after paying its overdue interest. So which one is it? Which one is it? And that's where you conclude in your mind a balanced mindset. Though the people who are balanced and open-minded will be the ones that win in life, and generally, I believe, in the crypto space and everything else as well. Those that just go down one path without any substance or information properly, or, you know, a biased view with no accreditation behind it, well, fair play, you're not going to get very far. So let's see how this plays out, guys. But clearly Evergrande is in a bit of trouble, but it's very interesting to see. So here's the Express here in the UK. Financial crash fears erupt. What do you think people are going to do when they start reading all this nonsense? It's like with the housing market. It's like this is going to happen next day, and all of a sudden things drop significantly very quickly, and then we're back up again. Like I said with today, I'm not saying this over. It might carry on into tomorrow as more and more people wake up to the news and whatnot. But this was a very quick turnaround today. It's not even been really that much of a dent, to be honest. You know, things like Ethereum, okay, you drop in a couple $100, but in the grand scheme of things, guys, it was kind of most of these overdue for corrections anyway, because the last few weeks have been phenomenal in most of these projects. So it's understandable. Like I said, there's an opportunity to dive into things that you perhaps missed out on previously, or missed out maybe a few weeks ago or a couple of days ago. It's just opportunity. It's just opportunity for me as an investor. But yeah, kind of really wrapping that up, guys. I mean, like I said, Evergrande, you know, the sort of influence between crypto and that is not really direct as such. But you could look arguably at the USDT aspect, in the sense that, of course, like with most sort of institutional exchanges and things like that, especially with crypto, when you're talking about like liquidity pools and things like that, security tokens or token security offerings and things like this, a lot of things or companies would provide assets or whatever that might be, whether it be materialistic or monetary value, into as like a, not necessarily leverage, but like a deposit, almost like a trust mechanism. And there is a lot of talk around USDT having a lot of that behind it, especially from China and Hong Kong, etc. Not just those, across the world, really, infrastructure of liquidity into these things. Not just USDT, of course, other things like Bitcoin and so on and so forth. So, there's loads of stuff going on in the background that you perhaps don't think about. And when a big company like that has a ripple effect across the ecosystem of real estate and then into banks, that's when the questions start getting asked about the liquidity and the following the money and going, right, well, God, we need to pull out of this now. And then all of a sudden, it just takes one whale to pull out because they get worried or something, and there's a big drop. And everyone jumps into the conclusion that they need to sell. I'm not doing that. No chance. I'm holding. So, guys, hopefully that's kind of eased the minds a bit, and maybe a bit more detail about what's potentially actually going on in the background. Make your own conclusions. Make and deliver your strategy and your investments over the next day or two based on what you think and feel is right. But like I said, for me personally, I'm holding. I'm not bothered about this one bit, and I look forward to the retracement back up to good heights in the coming days or weeks. Certainly not fussed about this one whatsoever, but do keep an eye on Evergrande's movements and other projects like it that are in trouble, because now that not directly or forcefully, it does have an effect across the board. Guys, we're going to wrap that up there. Let us know in the comments below what you think about this topic, and in general about Evergrande. And let us know if there's any other things in the news or perhaps other similar businesses or things that you might feel that are related to this, or potentially ones in the future. Drop them in the comments. We'll review them and we'll take a look and perhaps open some of those cans of worms as well. Thanks for watching, guys. Steady as we go. Hold tight. No problem. Bye bye.